Hello and welcome to GuyLogicGaming. My name is Temko and this is Kingdom Come Deliverance, brought to you by Warhorse Studios, also published by Warhorse Studios, a Czech developer, and this is their game, their grand scale RPG set in 14th century Bohemia, which is, unsurprisingly, current day Czech Republic. Now, that all said, this is a first-person RPG, much like in the vein of something like Oblivion was, or if you're a little bit more modern, Skyrim, though there are definite changes in between those games in terms of actual gameplay. Quite a few, in fact. This mostly feels like a mix between Skyrim, Oblivion, and The Witcher 3. And whether or not that is good, I'll leave up to you as we dive into the rest of the game. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at options, setting, and talk a little bit about PC performance, because that is definitely a big old question mark right about now. The reason I say that is that even though the game settings are mostly okay, you can do in-game subtitles and cutscene subtitles and text and audio languages in a couple languages that are available. All of that is pretty much par for the course, and especially in a game that is mostly an indie title set at a AAA price, the options menu itself is fairly decent. Good set of resolution options, windowed, borderless windowed, and actual full screen. It has an FPS slider, an FOV slider that only goes up to 75, though I must add that I've never felt nauseated playing at 75, though the default 60 definitely made me feel a little bit claustrophobic in terms of tunnel visioning. But if you head to advanced graphical options, you're going to see more things like object detail, game effects, lightning, particle physics, etc, etc. You won't have any options to choose what kind of anti-aliasing you want, and the same goes for a couple of other things that really just says you can go all the way up to ultra high. Now, if you're wondering why I'm playing this at very high and not playing this on ultra plus plus with my 1080 Ti overpowered as hell graphics card, that is because the performance of this game is utterly abysmal in every regard. And you may have heard this from other reviewers, you may have heard this from other people, but the performance for this game is atrocious. 60 FPS is a pipe dream 9 out of 10 times you're looking at it. And inside towns, cities, or active areas with combat, dips below 30 are actually very common. Not okay in any stretch of the imagination. That all said, I'll dive into performance and bugs and issues with the game a little bit later on. I just want to mention up front, the performance really isn't that amazing. That said, the options menu itself though is pretty damn decent. Sound settings also pretty complete. There is no master volume slider, and you're gonna have to fiddle with in-game sound and voice-over sound a little bit because the default balancing in my eyes isn't perfect, with character cutscenes sounding too soft compared to background noise by default. So you're gonna have to play around with that a little bit. Controls are fully rebindable, as expected in a PC title, so nothing strange or unusual there. And the default controls are mostly logical for the most part. I had a couple of issues with the controls for mounting your horse or summoning it being on the X, but you can rebind these, of course, as you deem fit. Other than that, pretty much decent controls as you'd expect them to be. And then you have support for Tobii eye tracking. I do not have a Tobii eye tracking unit here, so I could not test that, but reports say it's about as efficient as you'd expect it to be. Maybe if you have mobility issues, or if you really like the extra eye control, you could do that. At least it supports it, which can't be said for many other games. That all said, let's go ahead and dive into gameplay and show you exactly what the hell is going on with the PC performance in this title, and well, talk about the RPG itself, because that too has a lot going for it, with a couple of asterisks attached regarding some issues. Let's go ahead and dive in. Diving into gameplay, there are 3 things we have to cover first, and those things are obviously visuals in a first-person RPG. How does it feel to walk around? How does it feel to interact with the world? And how does combat feel? Because that is a big part of the game, and it deserves quite a bit of attention in my opinion. First things first, movement around the world is done through walking, of course. You also have access to a horse fairly early on in the game, about 4 or 5 hours in, and trust me, that is early on in the game, with about 50 hours of gameplay content expected to be about the average you can spend on just about doing everything in the game. So 5 hours in, you'll get your horse, and that's mostly just following the main storyline. You might get it an hour or 2 sooner if, unlike me, you don't spend time wandering around doing all sorts of side questy bullshit. In-game movement though for your character is fairly normal. You just walk around, you can jump on things, you can climb over hedges and stuff like that. Nothing really strange. Walking around on a horse though feels really clunky, and that is a damn shame. Especially if you're used to games like The Witcher or Skyrim or Oblivion or any other game that is in the same type of fantasy setting that has horse riding involved in it. This game's horse riding feels like absolute ass compared to those, any of those, and most of those aren't really even that good by themselves, to be honest. So you can imagine how bad horse riding feels in this game. Now, it's not all bad, it's just mostly the horse controls that feel bad, especially if you're trying to move around or fight on horseback with a sword. It doesn't feel great. It's doable, but it's very annoying. It doesn't get in the way of gameplay though, and this is the core of what I'll be talking about when looking at Kingdom Come Deliverance, because there is a lot of flaws in this title. As I said, riding around on a horse is annoying. It is not great, it is tedious, but the regular canter you can do by just driving around on a road, you can do so much like in The Witcher, and the horse will automatically follow the path you're on right then, which is an amazing quality of life feature that really improves the overall horse riding experience. But if you're galloping, the horse drives more like a pointed missile than it does something with an actual mind of its own and a turning speed, and that is not good. So there is that disconnect at both ends. Some quality of life improvements while not really improving the overall feel of the experience. Good, not great, flawed. And that could be said for every feature in this game across the board. Now, talking about horse movement also requires us to talk about interaction with the world. Where can you do things? How do you navigate? How do you fast travel? All that sort of stuff. Navigating through the world is initially done by foot, and you can enter most buildings that are around, though there's not a lot of interaction within those buildings. Lots of people on the street you don't have any dialogue with at all, and the ones that you do, while having a varied amount of voiceovers and a very large amount of dialogue in terms of fluff dialogue available that is actually beneficial for your character progression, which I'll get into in a little bit, lots of them still have absolutely nothing. So you'll be walking around villagers or woodcutter camps or something like that, and there'll be nobody to even say hi to overall. They'll not even react to you. They'll completely ignore you unless you're actually hitting them or robbing them under their noses. After that, you obviously have houses you can get upstairs and climb ladders and go down basements and all that sort of stuff. And while there are some bugs here, which I'll get into in a little bit, most of that is fairly natural. Then you get on horses or you run around on roads and back roads, and that too is fairly natural. You can come across people also being on the road. You can come across interaction with other people traveling. You can find beggars on the side of the road, or wayward knights that'll challenge you to a duel or a wager, or bandits in the forests if you're further away from home. All of this is fairly good. Problem is that most of the world, while you're riding around in it and moving around in it, even though it looks fantastic in terms of world cohesion, if not visual fidelity, feels pretty empty. The few sounds you hear, like a bird flapping overhead or underbrush or an animal in the brush, aren't really often there, and the few rabbits or deer you find really only spawn in specific locations related to hunting camps or story progression quests, and that too is a little bit of a shame. It's like the developers made a massive world and then forgot to put stuff in the forests, and that again keeps it away from being an amazing experience to explore the world and see around in it, and just a nice experience to ride around in while you go from A to B. The world itself, outside of the beaten path, doesn't hold much depth or value in terms of progression or gameplay content. A damn shame, because this world has a lot of potential, and it uses a lot of that potential for its story, it uses a lot of that potential for its character building, but it doesn't use it in the open world aspect of its open world, which is where this game often strikes that duality between trying to be story driven while also not hand-holding you and railroading you into a specific path, and it doesn't always strike the right chord in my opinion, but more on that again later. There's a lot to cover in this game, so keep in mind I'm going to be covering this chunk by chunk. Lastly, you have fast travel. Fast travel is done from point to point. You open your world map, you select the fast travel point, and then your character waddles off over to that location. This is done, and it takes you daytime or nighttime across the world, and it also costs you energy or nutrition while you're traveling. So unlike The Witcher 3, for example, where fast travel is instantaneous from location A to location B, this isn't instantaneous, it's just literally faster travel. So you don't have to gallop up on your horse and just drive over to that location. You sort of sit back and watch your character move across a world map for about 10, 15, 20 seconds depending on where you need to go, following the main roads. Again, even on these main roads, while fast traveling, you can get ambushed, either again by beggars or knights driving around the road challenging you for a duel, or again bandits that want to kill you. And you can decide to engage with these, you can decide to try and run away, maybe you'll get away. And this again ties into skills and abilities and all that sort of thing you have. Overall, the world traveling and the way the world works is pretty damn good. Towns you have to go to and explore them and find the fast travel points and find location you can get to. After that, you can travel between locations, but even that you have to think ahead. If you're going to spend 2, 3, 4 hours traveling game time into a different location, that means you're gonna lose energy. That means you have to think ahead about where you're gonna sleep, at a tavern or your own home, or you're gonna have to think about getting food, because food again spoils. So there is decision making involved in world travel, which is a novel and interesting concept I really do enjoy. It makes the world feel much bigger than it is in actuality, and also makes you feel more involved in where you're going and not just zipping about across half the world because, well, you still have that one side quest to do on the other side of the map you couldn't be asked to do before. Now, you're probably thinking ahead and planning ahead and thinking where you can do things and how you can interact with things. And the game plays on that immensely well, because this is where we get to story and progression overall. Because a large part of the story progression and character progression is also tied into the world you experience. People you know or people that you've met in the past in the game, you'll come across in different villages that are on the other side of the map, and they'll give you quests again for different villages, and you'll give you objectives or goals or desires they have that you either accept or deny, because that is also a major part of this game, just not doing something you don't want to. You can go out and go to those other locations, and if you've already scouted ahead, if you know what you're doing, you can reasonably and organically explore the world while performing a bunch of activities, tasks, or even just riding around, shooting rabbits in the King's Forest and selling off their flesh as illegal goods, because again, it's the medieval times, and no, hunting that rabbit isn't your property, it's the Lord's. So starve on ahead if you want to. Gameplay progression for your character is also done in the same organic manner, and that is an amazing idea and a very well executed concept in this game. In fact, it is probably my favorite thing about this game next to the melee combat. Every time you do an activity, whether it's talking to an NPC, whether it's haggling for a better price at a merchant, whether it's shooting a bow at a rabbit, it's hitting an enemy with a sword, it's going to sword practice with a knight, it's sneaking behind someone and tapping them in the head, it's going around in a forest at night. There is so many different skills, so many activities you can do in the game that will improve your character progression. So you'll get skills, you'll get points, you'll get experience and level up with these skills. So you get experience in how to talk to nobility, how to talk to beggars, and these are different attributes that give you benefits as you go. You'll learn how to hunt in the forest, so you'll get more damage, or you'll learn how to track or hear better. So you'll get more clues when you're doing something in the forest. If you read a book, you'll get more knowledge on reading. So that gives you more knowledge about the world and things you can find. So if you come across something, you might get hints about a quest or an objective. Every step of the way, everything you do ties again into your skills. And based on the way you play the game, are you playing somebody that helps people in need? Are you going to be out hunting and stealing? Are you going to be robbing people in their houses? Are you going to be lockpicking and stealing from their homes? All these things feed back into your skills and creating a very organic experience. Now, obviously, like with Skyrim, like with The Witcher, like with every other game, you can obviously just min-max and optimize to your heart's content. But the way the game is designed is you don't have to, because organically as you're playing, the activities you do, the choices you make are already going to build the character in the direction you feel is good. So if you don't want to rob someone, you're obviously not going to get the stealing skill, but you also won't get arrested for robbery and get thrown in the pillory. For example, there is a lot of nuance and detail to every system here, and as the game progresses further and further, it shows up immensely well. Aside from character skill progression, there is obviously also gear progression and all that sort of thing. And most of the gear in this game is either gotten from bandits, gotten to you from quests, or bought through from merchants. And you can do so with gold. So how do you get money? Well, money can be gotten in 3 very specific ways, and they're all fairly simple. One is always to steal it, or kill something and you loot it from somebody's corpse, or you loot it from a house. The other way is performing tasks for a variety of different people in towns, around villages. And if you do these, you'll get awarded. Same old quest system as any other game has. But here it's doubly important, because those choices you make to help someone, whether it's to get hides from the King's Forest and in essence steal from the king, whether it's to find a job for someone, all these different things you do again reflect on you. So the choices you make and the people you help and the activities you do, not just for the money gained or for the reward gained, also impact how other characters interact with you in the game world, which is a truly fantastic experience. Beyond that, gear can be broken, gear can be repaired, etc, etc. This is all fairly par for the course. You'll get potions that will help you get more stamina and all that stuff. And even though the game doesn't have a magic system with fireballs and lightning bolts, the potions still give you buffs and debuffs and a variety of different things you can use to improve yourself through alchemy. A bit like The Witcher 3, except for the fact that The Witcher 3 has flaming burning fingers. When you combine this character progression with the organic world traveling, with the way the story unfolds piecemeal, you have a very solid RPG experience, especially in the immersive first-person mode. Truly an excellent bit of story, excellent bit of character development with well-written characters, well-voiced characters, though again technically not perfect in many regards, that always feel natural and evolving as you go forward. Also, an interesting take on the game is the setting. You're not some noble lord, you're not the savior of the world, you're not the glorious hero come from yonder. You are a son of a blacksmith that fucked up and now sort of tries to survive and do his shit. Good luck. Everything in the game is tied around that. You're nobody special, you're nobody important, and nobody really gives two flying fucks about you. And you're gonna have to find out and deal with your own demons for yourself as you traverse through this world. This includes the way you progress through quests. As I mentioned earlier, there's tons of quests alongside the story progression and all that sort of thing, but some quests are also timed to specific moments or specific activities. Many quests you get are basically telling you to meet here at noon with this character, and if you're not there at noon, you will fail that objective, and you might get a second objective, but that will diminish your standing with that character. That might diminish the quest reward you get, that might actually impact what kind of follow-up you get in terms of rewards, in terms of follow-up quests, in terms of fame, in terms of renown, etc., etc. All of that is fantastic. It feels alive, it feels coherent, it feels great. This is the part that keeps pulling me back in every time I alt F4 from this game from sheer and utter frustration due to its issues and bugs. So let's get to the technical incompetence of the title, because there is a lot to cover here. First, performance-wise, you could have seen the FPS meter in the top left of the screen rolling around as it goes. Now, I'm uploading to YouTube at 1080p 60 FPS, but obviously the recording is going to be fluctuating, which is not great, and I couldn't get this game stable at 60 even on low settings. And I'm on a 1080 Ti. There is literally no excuse for a game not to run at 60 FPS on any setting for this kind of graphics card. So if you're running anything less than a 1080 Ti, you can expect very low frame rates on occasion. And you can time them. This is not a weird issue where one area has a dip in frame rate that can get patched out. This is consistent across the board. Every time you get to a town, every time you come across an NPC, every time you're near a shack, a tower, a wall, something built, you are going to have FPS drops. Consistent drops in FPS that stay down. There were areas where I was on low settings looking across a grassland and had 120 FPS, no problem. And then I'd turn around, look at a castle wall 10 inches in front of my character's face, and I'd have 20 FPS. It doesn't make a lot of sense, it's not acceptable, and for all my praise about the world, story, cohesion, character progression, and everything that ties into it, just this part alone makes me very hesitant to recommend the title for you right now, because performance is abysmal. Next up, bugs. And there are a lot of them. Just in this recording alone, you'll notice like 5 or 6 bugs if you pay attention. But I can tell you I've had bugs where I couldn't enter doorways because they thought the door was closed when it wasn't. I've had bugs where I couldn't go upstairs, literally blocked me with an invisible wall from going up the stairs. I've had bugs where I couldn't trigger a save. I've had bugs where the game would go into a block mode when you're in combat and it wouldn't go out of blocking. I've had the opposite happen where the game wouldn't block at all. I've had it happen that I would be riding around and the audio would stop for the entire game and then 5 minutes later restart again. I've had NPC voices cut out halfway in a sentence. I've had NPC voices get very, very soft while I'm talking to them. I've had my horse unspawn under me when fast traveling. There are more bugs in this game than I can recount, and that is not okay. Any of these game-breaking issues are not okay. The performance isn't okay, and this insane amount of bugs is very much not okay. I can heap praise on this title, and I will continue to do so, because this title deserves a lot of praise. But right now, this instant on version 1.2.2, there are too many bugs for me to recommend it at full price, or at any price, to be utterly honest. If this game throws out a bunch of fixes, if this game has its shit sorted, even if they only bug fix and fix performance and do nothing else, at full price I would have recommended this title. Right now, I'd say wait a month or two, see what the developers do in terms of bug fixing, because right now it's a right mess. So, back to praising this game, let's talk about combat. Let's talk about melee combat in particular, because ranged combat can go jump off a roof, not because it's bad, but because I'm bad at it. Ranged combat in this game is very old school, draw a bow and sort of aim the arrow where you think it's going to land. So it takes a lot of trial and error to get used to where you need to point your arrow, where you need to point your bow. There's a lot of arm movement if you're not used to shooting with a bow and arrow, which improves with skill later down the line. There's a lot of wasted stamina when you're drawing a bow because it takes effort. Bow fighting in this game is slow, it's cumbersome. I really don't like it, and all the skills associated with it I also really don't like, so I don't have a lot of praise for the archery in the game. That said, it's not bad as far as archery systems in medieval games go that are trying to touch on the realism aspect of the game development. There is no reticule in the middle of your screen when you're aiming a bow, and that is a bigger issue because I feel that would have improved the bow performance and the bow gameplay quite a bit. Because there is a reticule in the middle of your screen when you're in first person mode walking around. There is an action area for you to aim your sword or spear or hammer at someone when you're in melee combat, so why isn't there something with a bow that tells you sort of arrow drop-off rate or distance or something similar that you can get at least a little bit of an idea where the hell your arrow is going to end up going. It's not a bad system, it's just a system that is not designed for people like me that don't have the patience to do trial and error to figure out how to use archery. That said, the melee system makes up for that some and then again, because holy hell is it fun to fight someone in melee in this game. It never feels like you're an overpowered god of war. It never feels like you are the man and you can take on 20 enemies at the same time while throwing fireballs out of your ass. It feels like you are that blacksmith boy that got a sword handed to him in his hands and got told to good luck, have fun out there. And you're fighting dudes that have been bandits for years, or soldiers, or other kinds of enemies that, well, are more knowledgeable than you, that know what they are doing, that can block and counter and riposte, and you can't do any of that. Again, this ties into gameplay progression and character progression as well, because as you level up, you'll unlock more skills, you'll unlock combos, you'll unlock special abilities, but this also ties into story when you'll also learn some of these as well. Overall, this tie-in, great. Combat itself, it means that early on in the game, you are truly weak. You can block and you can hit back and you might get 1 or 2 hits in, but it's slow, it's cumbersome, and it's more about the opponent making a mistake than it is you being good with your weapon and trying to overpower them. Later down the line, when you have access to combos, to counters, to riposts, then you are a beast. You're still not invincible, and the enemy will still mess you up if they get 2 people in front of you or somebody flanking you because you can't fight 2 people or 3 people at the same time. But 1 versus 1, you're going to get a grasp on things and not really get your ass handed to you that easily. All of this combined, again, organic character progression, organic world progression, organic story progression, all tied together is the core of the game's experience. So if you enjoy RPGs that are about story and world and expose and immersive feeling about a idea how something used to be with a bunch of touch-ups obviously for gameplay purposes, then Kingdom Come Deliverance delivers a lot of that. And the same goes for combat. It's a little bit slower paced, it's more methodical, it's thinking ahead, it's waiting for your opponent to make a mistake. If you're outnumbered, you are in serious trouble, try running away. If your enemy has a bow and he has an ally who's in melee, try to get them between one another so that he can't shoot you with the bow while you're fighting his melee friend. Maybe try to break away and attack the one with the bow. You have a lot of options, a lot of strategic choice that depends a lot on how you play the game, what weapons you have available, and all that sort of thing. Pretty damn great. Coming back down to the technical things related to that is the fact that targeting in melee is always a little bit clunky. Again, I mentioned at the start of the review, but like horse riding, melee combat has a lot of features, has a lot of ideas, has a lot of really well implemented, cool things you can do, but it's missing that little last bit of quality of life. This doesn't change the fact though that melee combat is excellent, enjoyable, adrenaline-filled interaction. And this applies to more things in the same manner. As I mentioned, flawed in execution, but great in ideas. It's like developers just reached a little bit further than their technical competence or budget could handle. And you see this in character animations. If you're riding your horse and you're following someone along who is on a horse, you'll see the saddle clip in their back. If a character leaves out the door in a dress, you'll see their legs clip inside. When you walk around a corner, you'll see an enemy stutter with their animations. If you bump into someone, you see the little lack of polish that you genuinely don't expect in a game that tries to do something of this kind of scope. Here, because the way the game is built up, I sort of feel myself giving a little bit more leeway to developers for these mistakes. And I shouldn't really, but because of the scope of the game, the way they've done things in terms of world, character, and overall story design, I find myself not caring as much about less visual fidelity. So if you can swallow a little bit of that streamlined quality at the top end, just getting that targeting perfect, just getting that horse riding to feel excellent, not just be complete, also feel complete, not just having the animations feel okay, but feel great. If you're okay with taking that little step down from AAA experience to a AA experience with this title, then Kingdom Come Deliverance can offer a lot of value and a lot of gameplay for your experience. From an RPG perspective, I don't think I've played an RPG in 2018 or most of 2017 for that matter that immersed me this much, short of Divinity Original Sin 2, and that is a very different type of immersion, I can guarantee you. All that combined though brings me down to my final conclusion. Kingdom Come Deliverance has a lot of excellent ideas, excellent story building, excellent world design, excellent concept, excellent historical accuracy, excellent period-specific accuracy in terms of clothing, in terms of architecture, in terms of world building, all that sort of thing. But when it comes to the actual implementation in the game, it always feels like they're just one step short from being great. There's just a few too many bugs that are annoying enough to interrupt gameplay. There's just a few too many sloppy things in the game that don't feel great. Like, as I mentioned, animations that feel a little bit too stiff. Like the lockpicking that just feels a little bit too stuttery when you're trying to get that lock undone, when it doesn't bug out. All of this just missing that final step into being great. And if it's one mechanic that has this, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But when it's across every mechanic, every part of the game, every part of the story, and even in cutscenes and voice acting, and it just falls one step short of great, then you kind of have to wonder whether or not the game is worth it. And that is all going to depend on how much you like RPGs, because holy hell is this a good RPG. It just isn't a very good PC technical implementation, and that is a damned shame. For now, I suggest keeping an eye out on this title, if you can deal with early access, because that's what this game should have been in my opinion. Just for its technical implementation, then I strongly encourage you to get Kingdom Come Deliverance. If you don't want that, if you want a polished, complete experience, then I suggest waiting a few months to see what the developers do in terms of technical implementation. From my end, I have been walking and doing and trying to deal with all the flaws this game offers, because I am enjoying myself so immensely with the story. And that should tell you when I can sift through bugs time and time again, just because the way the world works and the way the character progression works is just so damn good. Kingdom Come Deliverance is available over on Steam for €50 or your regional equivalent, and you can check it out with a link down below if you are so inclined. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, press that like button down below. If you didn't like this video, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think about Kingdom Come Deliverance, what you feel about unfinished, unpolished titles coming on Steam, and what you feel about RPGs in general. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below, and I will deliver. So until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on GuyLogicGaming.